So we're back again. We're going to talk about advocacy, and that's been a very important issue with many of our support groups. And they want to be able to help one another. They want to do it safely, and they want to do it at a level where it's appropriate for the support group and the members of the support group. So we know that people with EDS have good days and not so good days. And a couple of days ago, Amanda Aikulola had a bad day. She was in the ER. So she is not joining us here live at the presentation, but she's on the phone, and she is a dedicated individual who wants to give her presentation, and we love that dedication. So what I'm going to do is turn the microphone over to Amanda. She's going to introduce herself, and I'm going to click the slides. So Amanda, welcome.
Hi, everybody. I am so happy to be with you all. From Rhode Island. I am calling in from Johnston, Rhode Island. I'm right outside of Providence, so I'm excited to be with you all in this way as a fellow zebra and support group network founder. I'm very excited to be involved and really excited to see support for our amazing EDS support group leaders out there, all of you. This is a great event. I've been following along from home. I had to leave, unfortunately, for a doctor's appointment, and I missed a little bit, but I will be catching up online, and I just want to say thank you to all of the amazing presenters before me. I think they've done a great job. And I'd like to thank John and Kendra for getting me involved and working with me around my body drama. So I love collaborating with others, and I strongly believe that with unity in our community, we can truly dazzle together. So this is a great event. I'm excited to be here, but I'm really sorry I couldn't be there in person with you all today. I do want to say that the real stars of the show today are all of you at home and in the room receiving this information today that are out there in the community supporting others and doing work as group leaders. I've done this work for years now as a group leader myself, and I know how hard it is. So I hope you get a lot from this awesome program that's been put together, and I hope that I can help you. I have experience in these areas, but I'm going to give you the best that I can in sharing information and resources, and I hope that you can take something away from this that can be useful for you. If you have any questions or follow-up after this, I'd be happy to help you in any way that I can. So thank you for including me, John and Kendra. Let's get started. And thank you for all that we do. And I just personally want to say that it excites me to see this. I've been in this game since about 2012 with advocacy and support groups, and we have come so far. So to see all of these amazing people and all of you at home streaming in and you all in the room is really exciting to me. And we are collectively doing so much together. So keep on with all of your advocacy work. It's really, really impactful. And I want to just encourage you all to keep working together. So let's start and moving forward. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit to you all. My name is Amanda Aikulola, and I apologize for the complicated last name. You can just definitely read a little bit about my background. I've been a nurse for about 25 years. I don't want to talk about me because, again, it's not about me today. But basically, I'm a fellow zebra, was undiagnosed, similar to all of your stories, you know, managing in life, fell and hit my head one day and became disabled. It was a struggle to find out why, and that led me on my journey. I eventually started, you can go to the next slide, please, John. I eventually started the Dysautonomia Support Network, and I'm the founder and the president of DSN. DSN is a wraparound organization, and we represent not just dysautonomia, but Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, Chiari, gastroparesis, and mast cell disorders, because it's a whole spectrum of disorders. So we do support advocacy, education, and resources for all of those communities, not just dysautonomia. It was named Dysautonomia Support Network because that was my first diagnosis, and that was what our first group was named after. But that is the first direction that our organization went into. And I also am the co-creator of the NeuroConnect Alliance, CSF Chiari Consensus Alliance, and all that other good stuff. So I live with all of these disorders, and my goal has really been, since I was diagnosed, is to really improve the patient experience and make a difference, and use my skill set and my business background and my nursing management background to make a difference. And I had to figure that out. You know, how can I use my training and my advocacy skills in nursing and my business skills, and how can I use that to really make an impact? So I'm going to just go over a few things with you today about how maybe we can learn together. Next slide. So the learning objectives are defined here, and hopefully this is what you'll take away from our time together today. We did have some formatting issues since I'm not there in person, and you may notice during the presentation that some of the pictures were displaced, but it shouldn't affect your experience. You should be able to see all the writing on the slide, and we'll straighten that out before we upload it on the website. So we're going to try to define advocacy, identify 5 types of advocates in the community at least. There's many more types. And then we're going to talk about scope of advocacy and limitations and what your role is as a support group leader. We're going to talk about things like what advocacy means to you, and what makes a good advocate, what the barriers and risks are associated to being an advocate, and different things of that nature. So what I'm going to start with is, what does advocacy mean to you as an individual? So these are just some ways that I've chosen to be an advocate in the last 5 or 6 years. There's some different pictures here from different events we've done at DSN. In the top left-hand corner, this is a picture from a support group meeting in Rhode Island that is a couple years old, which is probably something that you guys are all familiar with, you know, just a regular group meeting. This middle picture at the top is from United at the Hill conference, just a table presentation again, familiar to you guys. Then a walk that we did out there in Ohio a couple years ago for Dysautonomia Awareness Month. There's the Capitol building from Lobby Day last year. And then this is Mark Zuckerberg at the bottom, Facebook Community Summit that I attended in 2016. And this is the right-hand bottom corner, myself, my assistant executive director, and my volunteer, Rihanna, at the NIH Rare Disease Day that we attend every year, where we educate and raise awareness about the rare forms of dysautonomia. So this is some of the ways we advocate at DSN, and that's actually that's some of the ways, but there's many other ways. So I just want to stop for a minute, pause, and think about what you're doing right now for advocacy. I'm sure you're doing something. And think about really, what does advocacy mean to you? Because there's a lot of ambiguity in the way people perceive the word advocacy. And if you look it up online, you'll find 100 different definitions. The bad news is there's a ton of different ways people perceive the word advocacy, and there's many definitions online. But the good news is there's no wrong way to be an advocate, because it's not clearly defined, and it's still an evolving field. It's fairly new. It got really popular with the breast cancer movement, that you can't really screw it up. So you don't have to be afraid about being an advocate. You can really own it and make it fit what your passion or your drive wants it to be. And you can take your interest in talent or expertise and really use it to advocate in a way that works for you. So I skipped over this rather quick. So next slide. I'm sorry, John. I keep saying, forgetting to say next slide. I really apologize, because I'm moving my slides and you're not. Guys, I'm sorry. So he's doing a good job of that, keeping up with me. So if you see this slide, it says the definition of advocacy there is the act or process of supporting a cause or proposal. And it's really a generic definition. The act or process of advocating. That's it. And just think about all the different ways people advocate. And so it's really vague and generic, and it leaves you a lot of room for interpretation. So that's the beautiful thing. You can have fun with it. And you can use it in whatever way suits you. So I encourage people to be creative, and we're going to explore that a little bit as we move forward. Thank you, John. Okay, so when we talk about different ways that people are advocates in the community online and in everyday life, here's some examples of that. So we see advocates in schools, community centers, at doctors' offices, hospitals, legislators' offices, all over the community, really. And we don't often think about media outlets, social media, blogs, support groups, but there are several places in the community that you might find advocacy in action. I'm sure we could all find several more places if we thought about it. Things as simple as changing your profile pic to the frames that we make for Awareness Month, like everyone is striped up for Awareness Month right now. That's a form of advocacy. So I'm sure with more thought, we could probably list 10 ways that we've been an advocate probably this year. There are opportunities for advocacy all around us. So don't be intimidated, and it's scalable. So I want to encourage you all to find a way to engage on your own level. Next slide, please. Advocates can be very helpful when navigating life with complex medical health issues or mental health issues, or any disability for that fact. Any family member, spouse, adult child, or a trusted friend can advocate for you, or anyone. It may even be a member of your group that needs an advocate that you may go out with. I know I heard someone make a reference to that earlier, and that's a role that many of you may fill for your group members. I know I've gone out for my group members in the past. So you may need to go out to fill that role at school, at work, at doctor's appointments, or help people access medical care, insurance, or public services, such as helping someone fill out papers to access benefits or a Medicaid application. There's many different ways people need advocacy beyond the doctor's office. Next slide. If you're ineffective as an advocate for yourself, it's really important that you recognize that and ask someone to help you. So there's several different attributes that make people more successful as advocates than others. And so you want to be selective when you do ask somebody to go out and help you as an advocate. it's important that you select the right person to do that. Next slide, please. And those attributes are someone that's organized, someone that respects confidentiality, that focuses on empowerment, right? So you want someone that's going to empower you. If you're having someone advocate for you, you want them to make sure they're not wanting to be in control of your life, that they're going to empower you to make decisions with them. And that someone that has respect for everybody. You want someone that's going to have respect for you, your autonomy, your individuality, but also have the respect for the people that they're dealing with in their roles. Because it's really important that when we're engaging as an advocate, that we have the ability to consider the perspective of all parties to get the outcome we're looking for. It's also good to have reasonable expectations going in. And so you need someone mature that has good judgment, that exhibits good emotional control, someone that's a good communicator and a good listener. They're knowledgeable about the subject or group that they advocate for. So there's a little preparation that needs to happen before they can be effective. And then considering the perspective of the audience, again, that they wish to influence, and include that in their approach. That's going to always improve the potential outcome. Next slide, please. So there's different types of advocates and different types of advocacy. But it all starts with self. Okay, just like any type of growth or development in life, you have to master things in a certain order to be successful and build off those building blocks. So we should start first with self-advocacy, focus on that, master those skills, and go from there. So self-advocacy is the ability to understand and effectively communicate one's needs to other individuals without compromising the dignity of oneself or others. So this is where it begins, and this is something that I believe strongly we should start working on with our children, and give them plenty of practice as young adults, so that they can start developing these skills as early as possible, and we can be great role models. We'll talk about that a little bit in future slides. And when you're a self-advocate, this is the beginner level of being an advocate, you're really focused on peer advocacy. So you're taking action to represent the rights and interests of someone other than yourself on your level. So you're just focusing on really doing a good job of representing yourself, taking care of your needs, communicating your needs, and you're protecting your dignity, and making sure you're focused on self or people that are on your peer level, such as family members, friends, other support group members, and you may occasionally engage in group advocacy efforts because you're still kind of, new at this advocacy thing and you need support. So you may go out with your support group and you might take action in a group setting where you have support, backup, and direction, and you might take action to influence social, political, and economic systems to bring about change for groups of people through group advocacy. And this is something as support group leaders that you might also be partaking in or organizing. And it's a great goal to have, at least one or two group advocacy functions in your support group each year. And these can vary depending on the unique structure or needs of your particular group, the size of your group, whether you meet in person or online. And I would just encourage that You always think through accessibility issues and financial limitations when you're planning your advocacy events. But again, like I mentioned before, it's scalable, it's accessible, and there are ways to advocate on the internet or in person. You don't necessarily have to go to Washington, D.C. and lobby on Capitol Hill, which is expensive. It costs a lot of money and a lot of spoons to do that. But you could do a letter writing campaign and have everybody in your group write a letter in coordination with a campaign that a national organization is hosting for PCORI funding. Or you could create your own campaign and do it on a state level to your state representative, and you could all email or snail mail your letters in. So there's ways to adapt and meet your goals that you could scale down to whatever size your group is. So it takes a little creativity and strategic thinking, but we're really good at that as Zebras because what we do every day is adapt. So you just take that mentality and apply it to how you want to reach your advocacy goals, and then all of a sudden you have a group advocacy project. So it's a great thing to do, to sit down and plan ahead, 1 or 2 goals for the year. And I recommend, as was mentioned earlier, not trying to do it alone, having a couple co-leaders. And that, in my experience, I love working with teams of people because brainstorming sessions always tend to lead to a better outcome and more successful projects in my experience. So that would be a great thing for you guys to consider planning for next year. Next slide, please. So just rolling back a little bit to self-advocacy and where we could really encourage people as group leaders to get started and work with them is getting people to be great self-advocates and get engaged in their healthcare decisions, because it's really important that adults, teens, and children develop these essential life skills. The most effective advocates really master these skills before moving on to the next level, whether in group advocacy or anywhere else. So we as leaders really can help our members live their best lives by becoming great self-advocates. So a self-advocate is proactive, and they're engaged in their health care decisions. They often are in their community and they are using services, and they need to really be able to communicate and represent themselves, or sometimes educate people about their specific symptoms or their illness or their disability that they're living with. And this is difficult sometimes, and especially when you have more than one medical condition, as many of us do. It can be overwhelming and hard to do. So we want people to be able to educate effectively and clearly. And then in self-advocacy, as the slide says, a person is able or needs to be able to assess a situation, define a goal, identify the necessary steps to reach the goal, choose learning strategies, and then reach out for support and ask for help to put those strategies in place to reach the goal. So, as many of you live with these disorders yourselves, you'll know that plans don't go as scheduled, as we see this week with me. You can create a plan, and you can definitely have a situation that will come up 9 times out of 10 that will alter your plan. So what you have to do is really have a plan A, B, and C in place at all times and anticipate setbacks. So part of what we need to teach people is to prepare for those things and not get totally derailed when things don't go according to plan. The one thing that is great about being flexible is that we should be able to adapt to sudden changes. And with experience in doing that, we should be able to do that more gracefully over time. So as leaders, if we can get people to understand and accept that, we're doing them a great service in life and teaching them to be great self-advocates and allowing them to accept that is a great service to them. So if they're able to communicate their views and preferences, not give up on defining goals and moving forward, but helping them to create adaptive plans and realizing that a step back is okay and that they will just have to adapt their plan and get back on track as soon as they're able. This sounds so simple, but we all know how incredibly hard this can be. And people can get stuck here for quite some time because it is rather challenging. But I think if people can master self-advocacy, then the other steps can be somewhat easier to get through. So this is the beginning, and I'd be happy. I will share more resources and links. And this is almost a whole presentation in itself, but it's a beginning point. So I would really encourage you guys to spend some time and maybe do some meetings about adaptive goal setting, about self-advocacy, about effective communication and telling your story. I'm going to touch briefly on them here in this presentation because of time constraints. But I think that these are very, very important things that our members need in our community, and they will help them going forward as advocates as well as patients in life. So moving along, next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, parents can model self-advocacy skills by encouraging children to engage with healthcare providers themselves during visits. And we want our youth to find their voice and learn to express themselves. And we do that by not speaking for our children in appointments and allowing them to speak for themselves and helping them learn to organize their thoughts before they have to speak and removing any anxiety before medical appointments, especially for our children with complex medical conditions. This is a great first start for children to become youth advocates. Next slide, please. And youth advocates are amazing, and there's so many benefits for youth advocates. It really helps young people develop essential skills and foster a healthy sense of independence by encouraging growth and many life skills that will help them in the future in so many ways, in school, in their careers. So, you know, youth advocates in general master self-advocacy at a young age. They focus on raising awareness. They inspire and mentor their peers. They're not defined by their illness. They use their talents and their gifts to be advocates. They use social media wisely. They tell their stories effectively. They articulate their needs. They master essential life skills. And most importantly, they build self-confidence. So it's a way for them to take this negative experience in their life that is beyond their control and turn it around in an empowering way and really change the experience. So it's something that is really what I see as life-changing, not just for themselves, but for all the people that they actually impact by being an advocate. So I really would love to see, we're investing at DSN a lot of focus into building youth advocacy programs because I think our children and our youth really need somewhere to put their energy and their focus. And I definitely think that if any of you have youth groups, it would be somewhere that you might want to consider focusing as well. And advocacy doesn't need to always look a certain way. You can be yourself and have fun along the way. So we have done some things that are a little different. I don't know if you're familiar with our next slide, please. Our 5K, our virtual 5K, we took the traditional 5K and made it accessible. And we wanted people to be able to, who have never thought that they could ever do a 5K, be able to do a 5K. And we wanted children to be inspired and be involved, and kids that were in wheelchairs to have that experience. So we have the superhero virtual 5K, and we built programs for that. We had the Scarecrow Festival, and we had scarecrows with EDS and POTS. We had a big awareness event with that. So we do fun things. It doesn't have to always be legislative in nature. You can do things differently for your group, whatever fits your group. And we want to just encourage you to use whatever the community will do to support you, use that and turn it into an advocacy project. Basically, if anybody offers to give me anything, I will find a way to make it an advocacy project and build awareness. So, we always say we put the fun in fundraising, and there's advocacy and awareness in everything we do. So have a good time with it, and do something that feels natural to you and that interests you. Don't make it hard, and make it fun and engaging for the people that are involved. Also for the public, that's the other thing I want to say. I caution you, don't make it so heavy. If it's like really heavy and it's focused on pain and an uncurable disease, sometimes the public will not want to engage fully because it's a sad feeling. So if you can find ways to educate people and they can have a good time while they're doing it, you'll find people will turn out in greater numbers. Therefore, you're educating more people. So you want to educate them on the condition without making them leave with an emotional feeling of sadness. And that's tricky. And you might need some help with that. I'd be happy to answer any questions later on that if you have any. But, we want them to understand the experience, but we don't want them to feel bad because they won't come back and they won't sign on board to help you long term get the word out if they feel bad. Okay, next slide. So you never know where you might end up. So this is the Facebook Community Summit that I mentioned earlier. My biggest awareness moment was this banner I made. So like I said, we do full awareness campaigns. For EDS Awareness Month, I made it to 2016 in my bedroom. I do most of our graphics. And it was in all of our groups. I was selected from Facebook in 2016. They changed their mission statement at Facebook. They wanted to really focus on groups and bringing people together in 2016. So they changed their whole mission statement, and they picked 100 people on Facebook, all of Facebook, that ran groups. They picked 100 most significant, or the 100 groups that made the most significant impact on Facebook, and I was chosen as one of those people, which was absolutely crazy. There was like a whole nomination process and interview process, and they selected our Dysautonomia Divas, Dudes, and Zebras group, which was my first group I ever started in 2012, as one of the most significant, impactful groups on Facebook. And so I got invited to this summit. It was their first summit that they ever held, and I was allowed to bring 2 people from the organization with me. And they basically spoiled us and put us through it was 3 days of exclusive events and training and whatnot. But during this time, they live streamed this whole announcement Mark did with launching the new mission statement of Facebook. And behind him on that screen you see, with him, there were the group headers for all of our groups, there were 100 groups chosen, so they were flashing on the screen as he live broadcast for an hour. And there were millions and millions of people watching all over the world. And there was our Ehlers-Danlos syndrome awareness banner, that one that's there above our heads, flashing all over the world with millions of people seeing it. And I was just sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. So you don't know, you don't know where you're going to end up. So I want to encourage you guys to, keep working. And, when you work hard, things can happen. Great things can happen. So I continue to still work as a mentor for them in their Power Admins group and Power Pages. We now run, 70-something groups on Facebook, and we have an Inspire community as well. We've grown and done a lot of other things off Facebook as well as an organization. But, with passion and help, you guys can do anything. And you never know how much of an impact you can have. My goal when I first started was to have a support group available to everybody with dysautonomia in 50 states. And now we're providing support to people in 50 countries. So, the sky's the limit. And just really believe in yourselves and believe in the power of good intention. You never know where your work is going to land. So just keep moving forward. Don't be intimidated by things. And there's plenty of people out here that are willing to help you. Next slide. So there's professional advocates and there's non-professional advocates. And non-professional advocates are just as valuable to our community as professional advocates. There's a need for both. And I don't want you to feel like because you don't have professional training that you're not good enough to be an advocate. There are people out there that have talents and skills that they don't even know they have, and they are doing amazing things. And then there are artists and comedians and things that raise awareness in ways that professional advocates can't do. I spent some time this morning interacting with a doctor online and reaching out to other doctors and educating physicians and nurses online this morning off of a Facebook feed post that I interact with medical providers with. And who knows how many people did that. And there was another healthcare professional doing that too, educating on the same thread about risks associated with people with our disorders. So there's many, many ways that people can be advocates. And then non-professional advocates too. But like professional advocates, non-professional advocates, they just need to know what their scope of advocacy should be, what their specialty is, and then focus on the peer-to-peer advocacy and really try to raise awareness and sharing information that's concise and medically sound, that's put out by medical professionals or by national organizations, and then work as they can to raise awareness. So we want to do what we call peer-to-peer advocacy if we're non-professional, and let medical professionals do the medical teaching, and the national organizations do the national campaigns that create the print materials sometimes. And even as a national organization, we have to be careful, and we have standards about what we put out medically, and we have to have everything reviewed. So we want to just make sure that when we're educating people and we're teaching people that everything's factual, accurate, up to date, and it's really cumbersome to do that. So you as group leaders don't want to put yourself in a situation that you're going to put out something that's inaccurate, it's outdated, and it reflects poorly on your group. So the safe way to do that is just focus on awareness, or align yourself with an organization, a national organization that you trust, that has good standards, and work with sharing their information or their resources and support those efforts, and stay aligned with them so that you can take that big, huge burden off your back. Because honestly, I have to tell you, to do it properly, it's a huge burden, and you have to have a large team and a budget to do it properly. So that would be my recommendation, and then just focus on the awareness aspect and say, I'm not here to educate you on the condition, but here's a bunch of great resource videos. Here's a pamphlet from the Ehlers-Danlos Society, or this other society, or this other nonprofit organization, and they have amazing physician awareness videos, and I would just like to educate you today about the patient experience, because I'm an expert in that. That's where I can really shine, because you guys are all experts in your experience. You guys have tons of experience as group leaders, patients, moms, spouses of patients, and I really just want you to be aware of when to speak as an expert, and then when to use the other types of advocates to come in and fill that role. It's really important. We as medical providers do that. We know how to stay in what we call our scope of practice and when to call someone else in. Next slide, please. Always make sure also that when you're sharing medical information, it's from a credible, reliable source. It's very important to be an effective advocate. So there are several ways to advocate on a local or state level that are very impactful every day, and each advocate will differ in ways that they go about their daily lives. But again, finding a way that works for you, and it can be scalable and accessible for everybody that wishes to get involved. If you are struggling to find a way, feel free again to send a message to the website, and I'll try to get back to everybody. But social media campaigns, we do tons. This is just our autonomia awareness frame from last month. Creating frames, creating graphics, sharing education. And you don't have to create everything. That's the other thing. There's tons of good stuff out there now. Most of us, major nonprofits, put out content, and we have teams to create the content. And again, it's up-to-date, medically factual, accurate. You can share it. You don't have to create content. But, there's a lot of good information out there. If you're not sure what to share and you want to plan, organize a plan, reach out to your nonprofits, and say, do you have anything coming up? And engage, create an awareness walk. We have a program at DSN, and I'm sure other organizations do. I know CSF has one. I'm not sure about the Ehlers-Danlos Society, but where you can host, I know the Marketing Foundation does too, I'm sorry, but I'm sure most organizations, whoever you prefer to work with, you can host an awareness walk. So there's ways to really get involved and do something on a group level that you could do to get your members involved and support your cause of choice, and many, many different ways to physically get involved and engage people, or actively do it online, like I said, with letter writing campaigns or emails. We at DSN are very focused on meeting people where they're at. So we have been for years doing online support group meetings through Zoom. We've had online support. We've offered that since 2012. And we do things like the accessible 5Ks and That's been a focus of ours because we understand not everybody can make it out to the meetings. So in addition to the in-person meetings, we do everything digitally as well. So if you're having struggles with that, I can only say the internet is making it a lot easier to give people these options. And we have an advocacy team. One of our advocacy team members would probably be able to help you come up with some ideas if you need that. So reach out if you do need help, and we'll try to help you figure something out for your group if you're struggling. Next slide, please. So here's some group advocacy projects I threw. So we just had the NeuroConnect Summit last weekend, which was amazing, and that was a collaborative project where we created a 3-day summit, and that was with the 2 other nonprofits that we partnered with, and it was great. And we had our Patient's Choice Awards and really celebrated with I think we had 6 other organizations come and present the awards, and it was amazing. So we wanted to really celebrate advocates and researchers and providers in our community and the work that we've all done together. So that's a great thing too. Sometimes celebrating success and really highlighting each other's work is important. So we need to stay inspired. We're all working really hard, and it's important that we recognize it. This is a slide. This picture here is, we have what we call lifestyle clubs, and this woman, Missy here, received an award for during Rare Disease Week for this painting that she did. And this is myself and Kathy. I think it was in the Hart Senate building in D.C., and we went to see her and congratulate her. She's one of the members of our artist club when she received her award. She's an amazing woman, and she shares her artwork all over the place, and that's the way she advocates. And she shares her story about dysautonomia, and she paints. She does this underwater. It's amazing. It's really amazing. So this is how she uses her talent and her artwork to advocate. So at the award show that we had people using music. We had a young man that performed, and he played guitar and sang. We had another we had 2 performers that they did a wheelchair dance performance to a song called Elastic Heart by Seal. So beautiful ways to be an advocate, beautiful ways. So next slide, please. I encourage you to really think about, ways that you might be inspired, and find a way that you could do something different and creative, and expand what advocacy might be for you or your group. So you have an experience to share, just like everybody else. You're an expert in your condition, your story. Don't be afraid to share it. If you need a professional advocate, call them in. You might need that at school. You might need that in a doctor's appointment or in a hospital situation. If you need one in a hospital situation, just so you know, they may be called something different. Next slide, please. Hospitals and insurance companies may employ professional advocates, just so you know. They're often called patient representatives or patient advocates. Social workers, ombudsmen, nurses, and chaplains may also fill this role. If the hospital doesn't have a patient representative or a patient advocate, ask for a social worker first. If they don't have that, ask for an ombudsman, which is not so common anymore, but they may have an ombudsman available to call. And then, default to a nurse or a chaplain, okay, if you need somebody. Next slide, please. Here's some other types of professional advocates. Something just to remind you, these are people that you all know, but these are all people that could sub in a pinch if you needed an advocate. I'm not going to read the list because you can all see the slide. And then teachers, social workers, lawyers. Lawyers are great advocates. Caregivers. There's a lot of other people that could sub in as well. Next slide, please. And just what is an ombudsman? So this is an older term, but I've been around for a while, so I just thought I would define this for you guys. So it's a government official. I think it comes originally from Sweden or New Zealand, but they help to be a mediator or settle a complaint. And usually in a hospital or sometimes in a public office. So I'm familiar with the term. I became familiar with it in the 80s and 90s. They're not as common as they used to be, but they're basically a mediator, or it's an older term, I believe, in my experience, for an advocate. But that's what an ombudsman is. I know people weren't familiar with that term when I first had this presentation out, so I've included that definition. So professional advocates work within the scope of their training, whatever that is, whatever that level is, and they may advise healthcare providers, legislators, and or media outlets based on their education or experience. So, again, like I said before, they would defer to the higher level advocate if they were to advise on something beyond their scope of knowledge as well. So media, ways you can advocate in the media too. Like I've written some articles for local papers, right? I've seen some really great EDS stories in the news. This is a magazine, a national magazine we were featured in the fall. Other ways are, well, I had some news coverage for a festival we did. That Scarecrow Festival actually got a lot of news coverage. We got a lot of media for that. But they kept pronouncing dysautonomia wrong, which was challenging. And then I called the newsroom and they ran it the next morning and they still pronounced it wrong. Kind of awkward with these odd conditions we have. So, I would just say do your best to get the phonetic spelling down and maybe send a recording of how to pronounce things. Lesson learned on that one beforehand if it's in print. But it's good to have the coverage one way or the other, but there are some challenges. But there's many ways to use the media for awareness, and I think we're getting better at that. I see a lot. And in our community. So there's instructed advocacy and there's non-instructed advocacy. And what's the difference? So basically it just means instructed advocacy, for example, means that you participate in an organized lobby day like with an organization, and they tell you this is what we're going to do. We're going to go out as a group and we're going to ask for this particular bill to be passed or for funding for this one particular research grant or whatever it is that you're asking for that day, and you're all instructed to do the same thing. And there's non-instructed advocacy, which means you're basically just asking someone to act in your behalf to resolve an issue, and you trust them to make the best decisions for you. Next slide, please. So a non-instructed advocacy is basically giving someone the autonomy to be an advocate on your behalf, such as having your sister call your insurance company to resolve an issue and be your representative. Next slide, please. So there are some potential barriers to advocacy that you should be aware of, and lack of time, knowledge, resources, lack of communication barriers. There may be professional or personal risk that you should be aware of and explore that, especially if you carry any kind of a professional license before you begin. You may have loyalty to peers or providers. You may feel powerless. You may have a lack of motivation or interest that gets in the way. Lack of education or access to decision makers. And I think that personally, that's what I see the biggest barrier to advocacy is. In my experience, getting in with the right people is the biggest challenge. And the way to overcome that is to really develop a relationship. Sometimes it takes going back a few times and developing a relationship with the people that you meet first to get that access. But it can happen in time. Next slide, please. And then challenges experienced by support group leaders. Again, similar, lack of education, resources, lack of confidence, lack of boundaries. We heard something on that earlier, but I really stress that boundaries can be an issue, so make sure you're taking care of yourself. Don't let overly dependent members drain you so you don't have the ability or the spoons to do this type of work if you're passionate about it. And communication barriers can be a big issue. So make sure that if you have those challenges that you get the support you need to address them. And if you are really passionate about being an advocate and you'd like to really take it to the next level, beyond the group advocacy level, and you'd like to become a professional advocate, or you'd like to be advocating on a national level, there are several opportunities. And consider volunteering with a national nonprofit so you can get some training and get involved on national advocacy projects. You can also become board certified as an advocate and get training and experience in that way. So I will put some links up about that, and you can explore that as well in the website. So if you're not sure where to start, don't get overwhelmed. There's many ways, but you don't have to do them all. You only have to pick one. That's the good news. But the first way to start is really becoming an expert in telling your story effectively, clearly, and concisely. This is an important advocacy tool. It also helps in social settings, right? We tend to tell too much or give too much information because we have these long, exhaustive journeys to getting diagnosed. So here's some tips for crafting your story. Be accurate, be brief, be positive, and be respectful when you're going out to advocate either in the legislative field or, even with doctors. Being accurate, brief, and positive helps, but it's a little bit different. So I recommend that, condensing and having a written version of your story is a great tool. We have a tool that we're working on. Robert Tamanio is responsible for this slide, and I want to thank him for this, and we're working on creating a tool to help people effectively write their stories, and I will share that link with you guys on my page as soon as it's done.
Okay, time.
So back to the slide, just what does advocacy mean to you? And what are your goals? And what goals can you set for your group this year? And that's it. So you have what it takes to dazzle. Believe in yourself and go for it. Find your advocacy niche and join forces with others. Develop a network of resources and believe in yourself. Don't get overwhelmed. You can do it too. Thank you all. And again, there'll be more resources and links on the page for you in the future. Thank you.